Hello everyone. Today we will talk about Unit C, thinking critically. Building a bridge across a river involves several critical steps that mirror the process of critical thinking. First, you would assess how people will use the bridge by foot, car, or train, and identify optimal foundation locations on both sides of the river. After considering various bridge styles, you would select one that fits your requirements. The next steps include creating designs, constructing models to test load capacity, and organizing schedules while collaborating with experts. Each of these tasks requires careful analysis and objective decision-making to ensure a successful outcome. This methodical approach is also essential for developing critical thinking skills. At Quest Specialty Travel, the focus is on addressing declining sales under the guidance of Grace Wong, the Vice President of Finance. The project team is working to boost enrollment for popular tours to Italy, France, and Australia. While enrollment for the tours in France and Australia has shown steady improvement, particularly with the Burgundy by Bike tour becoming a top seller, sales for active tours in Italy remain stagnant despite the region's popularity. Grace is seeking assistance in uncovering the reasons behind these flat sales in Italy. One key characteristic that sets humans apart from other animals is the ability to think, reason, and make informed judgments. While thought processes like reasoning, remembering, imagining, and reflecting are natural and sometimes automatic, critical thinking demands a higher level of analysis and discipline. The primary goal of critical thinking is to enhance decision-making and minimize the risk of acting on flawed assumptions. Grace Wong emphasizes the importance of critical thinking in investigating the flat sales of Italian tours, urging the need to deepen understanding in this area to tackle the sales issue effectively. To improve critical thinking skills, consider the following questions. Critical thinking involves a thoughtful and deliberate process of evaluating whether to accept, reject, or reserve judgment on an idea. It requires confidence in the idea being assessed and is applicable in decision-making, problem-solving, and belief formation. Despite the term critical often implying negativity, critical thinking is a constructive process that involves questioning assumptions, examining claims, and exploring alternatives. Understanding key concepts is essential for critical thinking. A claim is a statement about a topic that can be evaluated as true or false. Not all statements qualify as claims. For example, greetings or questions don't fall into this category. Issues are controversial subjects that invite discussion and concern, such as the stagnant sales of Italian tours at Quest. In contrast, arguments consist of claims supporting a conclusion, often backed by evidence. Effective critical thinkers evaluate arguments and claims critically. Finally, distinguishing between facts and opinions is crucial in critical thinking. A fact is generally accepted as true, while an opinion reflects personal belief, which may or may not align with reality. The ability to analyze claims and gather data to verify their truthfulness is essential for determining whether something is factual or merely an opinion. This slide illustrates the steps in critical thinking in a simple cycle around a claim or argument. Here's the explanation of each step. 1. Ask questions. Critical thinking begins with curiosity. You start by asking questions such as, is this claim true? What evidence supports it? What assumptions are being made? Asking questions helps uncover hidden details and prevents accepting information blindly. 2. Challenge assumptions. Every claim or argument is built on assumptions. Critical thinking requires testing these assumptions. Are they valid? Are they based on evidence or just beliefs? Could there be bias? Challenging assumptions helps avoid flawed reasoning. 3. Examine claim or argument. This step involves analyzing the argument itself, looking at the evidence, reasoning, and logic. You assess whether the claim is supported by facts, whether the evidence is strong, and whether the reasoning avoids fallacies. 4. Identify alternatives. Critical thinking doesn't stop at analyzing one claim. It also involves considering other perspectives or explanations. By identifying alternatives, you expand your understanding and increase the chances of finding a better or more accurate solution. 5. Central point. Claim or argument. At the core of critical thinking lies the claim or argument being evaluated. All the steps, asking questions, challenging assumptions, examining evidence, and exploring alternatives, revolve around testing and refining this claim. This slide is about understanding critical thinking by learning to distinguish between facts and opinions. Facts are statements that can be verified, measured, or proven true/false. They are objective and supported by evidence or data. Like enrollment for the Italian tours has not increased in 6 months. This is measurable from sales records. Overseas travel has declined by 3% since last year. This can be confirmed with industry statistics. Italy accommodates a wide range of budgets. This can be verified by comparing travel costs and package options. About opinions. Opinions are subjective beliefs or judgments. They may be influenced by feelings, assumptions, or personal perspectives. Opinions may or may not be true, but they cannot be directly proven in the same way as facts. Like Italy just doesn't appeal to our customers anymore. This is a perception, not a measurable fact. Overseas travel is considered a luxury in a recession. This reflects a belief or interpretation. Italy is too expensive. This depends on personal standards and comparisons. But the question is why it matters in critical thinking. Facts provide a reliable foundation for decision-making. Opinions help us understand perspectives, but should be tested against evidence. A good critical thinker separates the two, so they don't confuse personal judgments with objective reality. To organize your ideas while thinking critically, it's essential to identify, construct, and evaluate arguments, which consist of premises, claims, and conclusions. A well-structured argument uses premises as reasons to support its conclusion. When engaging in discussions, such as in a project meeting, paying close attention to the arguments presented by others is crucial for effective communication and analysis. To identify arguments, ask yourself what the speaker is trying to convey, what evidence they provide, and what conclusion they hope you will reach. Additionally, look for argument indicators. Words like because and since often signal premises, while phrases like as a result indicate conclusions. Understanding these signals can help clarify the structure of the argument being presented. It's also important to differentiate between assertions and arguments. An assertion is a statement made without supporting evidence, whereas an argument includes rationale to back up the claim. Furthermore, recognizing deductive and inductive arguments is vital. Deductive reasoning moves from general premises to a specific conclusion, assuming that the conclusion is valid if the premises are true. In contrast, Inductive reasoning draws broader conclusions from specific examples and tends to be less logically sound. By employing these techniques, you can enhance your critical thinking and effectively engage in discussions. To assess the credibility of arguments, it's important to evaluate the validity and strength of the supporting evidence. An argument can be considered plausible, authentic, or convincing based on how well its premises support its conclusion. For instance, when evaluating the argument that Quest should promote Italian tours more aggressively, follow these key steps. Steps in assessing the credibility of an argument. First, consider the validity of the argument. A valid argument has a conclusion that logically follows from its premises. It's essential to recognize that an argument can be valid even if one of its premises is false. However, if the premises are true and the argument is valid, the conclusion must also be true. Next, ensure that the argument is sound. A sound argument is both valid and has true premises. To determine this, examine the evidence presented and assess its accuracy. Avoid accepting conclusions from arguments that are not sound. Additionally, assess the credibility of the source. Generally, the more knowledgeable and expert a source is, the more credible the information it provides. First-hand knowledge is typically more reliable than second-hand information. Favor reputable sources like respected books, media outlets, and official websites over tabloids or personal blogs. Consider the authority of the claims made. Expert opinions based on education, experience, or special training are often trustworthy. However, be cautious not to assume expertise in one area translates to others. For example, a physician's advice on medical issues is credible, but their investment advice may not be. Finally, compare the argument to your own background knowledge, which includes your beliefs, facts, and experiences. You're more likely to dismiss arguments that contradict your established knowledge. However, maintaining an open mind is crucial, as your background knowledge may not encompass all considerations. By following these steps, you can effectively evaluate the credibility of arguments and make informed decisions. When evaluating the merits of ideas, evidence, or proposals, it's important to recognize that no argument is flawless. All contain some weaknesses. Sometimes, the person presenting the argument may try to downplay these flaws, fearing that their discovery will lead others to reject the entire idea. As a critical thinker, it's essential to avoid an all-or-nothing mindset. Instead, assess each argument based on its strengths and weaknesses. To effectively evaluate arguments, start by considering how to test the claims and premises. A scientific approach involves verifying the correctness of ideas. If an assertion cannot be tested, its validity remains uncertain. When faced with an argument, think about how you might test its claims and premises. Next, evaluate the relevance of the claims presented. A strong argument clearly explains its subject and ensures that all claims relate directly to the conclusion. If the claims are not relevant, the argument loses value and cannot reliably support its conclusion. Additionally, look for dubious assumptions within the argument. Stronger arguments typically require fewer assumptions, which are propositions taken for granted as true. If an argument is built on questionable assumptions, its strength diminishes. Moreover, compare the argument to other data, observations, and accepted ideas. While some proposals may be innovative, most should align with established knowledge. A critical thinker seeks to identify any inconsistencies or incompatibilities with existing information. Finally, remain open to alternative explanations. When someone proposes that one factor causes another, don't rush to accept it as true. Consider whether other factors might also explain the outcome, or if the assumed causation is logically sound. By following these strategies, you can more effectively analyze and evaluate the arguments presented to you. Developing critical thinking skills takes time and practice. To enhance your ability to think critically, it's essential to recognize and overcome common obstacles. For instance, Grace Wong is skeptical about the need for Quest to promote Italian tours more aggressively. After discovering that advertising expenses for these tours are already substantial, she seeks your help in identifying the root of the problem. Here are several strategies to overcome typical barriers to critical thinking. First, avoid egocentric thinking. This mindset limits your perspective by making you see the world solely from your own point of view. It can hinder your ability to appreciate different viewpoints and recognize your own limitations. Next, be aware of your social conditioning, which influences you to adopt the beliefs and values of your social group. While this can foster a sense of belonging, it may also prevent you from considering alternative ideas. Challenge yourself to move beyond these conditioned beliefs and explore diverse perspectives. Additionally, identify outliers in your past experiences. Outliers are extreme cases, either positive or negative, that can skew your expectations. For example, if your first flight was turbulent, you might develop an aversion to flying, despite that experience being atypical. Recognizing that such experiences are not representative can help mitigate these biases. Avoid normalization, which occurs when you assume that your ideas are standard simply because you've been exposed to them repeatedly. Critical thinking requires questioning your own beliefs and considering issues from fresh perspectives. This openness is crucial for problem solving. Lastly, while it's important to respect your emotions, you should also consider their logic and relevance to the decisions at hand. Be cautious of emotional thinking, as it can blur the line between feelings and rational thought. By applying these strategies, you can effectively navigate obstacles and enhance your critical thinking abilities. Okay. Now this diagram is a Venn diagram comparing creative thinking and critical thinking, showing how they are different and how they overlap. Creative thinking is about generating new, original, and imaginative ideas. It focuses on innovation and novelty. Openness to innovation, welcoming new ideas and solutions. Curiosity, asking questions and exploring possibilities. Invention, creating something new. Imagination, visualizing ideas that don't yet exist. Reasoning through analogy, making connections between unrelated ideas. Critical thinking is about analyzing, evaluating, and judging ideas. It focuses on accuracy, validity, and logic. Key features: evaluation, assessing the value, credibility, or usefulness of an idea. Classifying, organizing ideas or information into categories. Reasoning through logic, following structured, logical steps. Analysis, breaking down complex issues into smaller parts for better understanding. Overlap. This is where creative and critical thinking work together. These skills combine creativity with logical assessment to produce strong and innovative solutions. Shared features, description, explaining ideas clearly. Synthesis, combining different ideas into a new whole. Comparisons, identifying similarities and differences to better understand ideas. Avoiding deductive reasoning fallacies. A fallacy is an argument that appears valid but is actually invalid, often used either naively or to disguise a weak conclusion. Skilled communicators can make flawed arguments sound plausible, so it's crucial for critical thinkers to closely examine the premises and conclusions of any argument. For instance, after discussing the promotion of Italian tours with Grace and others, you uncovered an issue with the new tour assistant in Italy not returning calls and emails. This could be the core problem, but you want to ensure your reasoning is sound before presenting it to Grace. Guidelines for avoiding deductive reasoning fallacies. To strengthen your reasoning, be mindful of common fallacies. First, avoid the slippery slope fallacy, which suggests that one event will inevitably lead to a series of drastic consequences. If someone presents a slippery slope argument, ask them how they arrived at that conclusion to clarify their logic. Next, be aware of false dilemmas, which limit options to two extremes, often framing one as good and the other as bad. For example, claiming, either we increase hotel rates or we stop all tours in France presents a false choice, ignoring other viable alternatives. Recognizing such arguments helps you avoid being cornered into accepting a specific conclusion. Additionally, straighten out circular reasoning, where a premise merely restates the conclusion. This is logically flawed because it lacks independent claims to support the argument. Circular reasoning often occurs in personal opinions, so be cautious in such discussions. Lastly, clear up any instances of equivocation, where ambiguous language creates confusion. For example, a sign that reads "fine for public sunbathing" can mislead tourists due to the dual meaning of fine. If you encounter ambiguity, ask for clarification before acting on the argument. By being aware of these fallacies, you can enhance your critical thinking and improve your reasoning process. Avoiding inductive reasoning fallacies. Inductive reasoning involves drawing conclusions based on evidence, but it's important to recognize that these conclusions are only as strong as the quality and quantity of the premises. Inductive arguments can be prone to fallacies, so careful analysis is essential, especially when discussing the need for training for the new tour assistant for Italian tours. Here are some common inductive reasoning fallacies to consider before speaking with Grace Wong. First, avoid hasty generalization. This fallacy occurs when broad conclusions are drawn from limited observations or insufficient data. Hasty generalization can stem from negligence, biases, or simply a lack of thorough investigation. It's essential to ensure that your conclusions are supported by adequate evidence. Next, separate cause and effect. When analyzing multiple events or situations, it's a common mistake to assume that if two things occur simultaneously, one must cause the other. To avoid this fallacy, ask whether there is sufficient evidence to support the proposed causal relationship, and consider other factors that might explain the correlation. Additionally, watch for false causes, encapsulated in the phrase post hoc, ergo propter hoc, which translates to after this, therefore because of this. This fallacy suggests that if one event precedes another, it must have caused it. However, it's crucial not to automatically assume a causal link exists without proper evidence. Finally, consider the composition fallacy, which occurs when one assumes that what is true of a part is also true of the whole. For example, If you have a bad experience with a single dish at a restaurant, it would be unfair to generalize that the entire restaurant is poor based on that one instance. To avoid this error, limit your conclusions to situations where you have specific information or experience. By being aware of these inductive reasoning fallacies, you can strengthen your arguments and engage in more effective discussions with Grace and others regarding the training needs of the tour assistant. Becoming a critical thinker. Becoming a critical thinker is a gradual process that demands conscious effort and a long-term commitment to evolving your thinking habits. This journey involves analyzing premises and data, as seen in the case of determining the need for training for a new tour assistant to enhance her skills. Such improvements are expected to lead to increased tour enrollments. When approaching discussions, like with Grace 1, confidence in your critical thinking abilities is essential. A key aspect of critical thinking is developing intellectual humility, which involves recognizing the limits of your knowledge and being aware of your biases. This openness enables you to consider diverse viewpoints and potential solutions, thereby minimizing the impact of false beliefs. It's also important to distinguish between being a critic and being a cynic. While cynics tend to be negative and quick to dismiss others, critical thinkers maintain an inquisitive and respectful approach. They question ideas without adopting a distrustful attitude, fostering a more constructive dialogue. Challenging your own assumptions and beliefs is another crucial step. By critically examining your ideas and not simply accepting them at face value, you enhance your ability to think deeply. This self-scrutiny allows for a more nuanced understanding of incoming information. Moreover, working through complex issues is vital. Critical thinking is often challenging and requires perseverance, as simplistic solutions are rarely sufficient for intricate problems. Embracing this complexity is part of professional growth. Finally, having confidence in your reasoning abilities is crucial. Understanding that critical thinking is a skill that can be honed through practice helps reinforce your capacity to think openly and honestly. While your ideas may not always be perfect, they will often be better than they would have been without critical engagement. Okay. This diagram explains the habits of critical thinking in a continuous cycle. Each step builds on the previous one to help you think more clearly, avoid errors, and make better decisions. 1. Discover and observe. Critical thinking starts with curiosity. You collect information, notice patterns, and observe details. This stage is about being aware of your surroundings and recognizing problems or opportunities. 2. Question assumptions. Instead of accepting things at face value, you ask, what assumptions are being made? Are they valid? Could there be bias? Questioning assumptions helps prevent blind acceptance of ideas that may not be true. 3. Evaluate arguments. At this stage, you carefully analyze the claims, reasoning, and evidence behind an argument. You look for strengths, weaknesses, logical fallacies, and whether the conclusions actually follow from the premises. 4. Test and revise. Once you have an idea or solution, you don't assume it's final. You test it in practice, gather feedback, and refine your reasoning. This step ensures continuous improvement and accuracy. 5. Inform or decide. Finally, you make a decision or take informed action based on your observations, questions, evaluations, and revisions. This decision is stronger because it's backed by evidence and critical reflection. An electronic book or e-book is a combination of a hardware device and software that enables users to read digital pages. E-books can be accessed on various platforms, most notably on dedicated devices like the Amazon Kindle, which quickly became popular after its launch in 2007. As reported by TechCrunch, e-books comprise a significant portion, 35%, of Amazon's total sales. They offer the potential to broaden the distribution of ideas and knowledge, prompting discussions about innovative applications, such as electronic tour guides for travelers. One of the key advantages of e-books is their ability to enhance research and thinking. Unlike traditional printed books, e-books allow users to search content electronically through hyperlinks, making it easier to connect ideas and arguments, thereby improving overall comprehension. E-books also provide a more engaging reading experience. They can incorporate multimedia elements such as sound and video, along with vivid graphics that surpass those typically found in print. Readers can annotate and highlight text without damaging the book, and they have the flexibility to adjust font sizes and lighting for a personalized reading experience. However, there are notable disadvantages. E-books require electronic devices and specific software to access, which contrasts with traditional books that need no special equipment. Additionally, e-book devices can be less portable and require power sources, making them more vulnerable to physical damage compared to printed books. Finally, the reading experience itself changes with e-books. Traditional books offer a tactile and visual engagement that can enhance learning. Quickly scanning through pages can often be more effective than searching electronically. Gaining an immediate sense of an e-book's content can be challenging, as users may not get the same intuitive feel from digital formats as they do from physical books.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to channel.